Alrighty, guys, it's time for another Jester's Judgment. As we take apart a game, we talk about the things we really like about it, the things we weren't too happy about, and then give you our final verdict and find out, is this a game you should try to find and add to your collection, or is this one that, because of issues, you might want to pass by? So, Conflict of Heroes. I've been playing this game for years and years and years and years. Uwe brought the game to CABS, Columbus Area Board Gaming Society, before it wasn't even released. I was at Origins when it was released. I was demoing games. I've been playing Conflict of Heroes for years and years and years and years. But I was playing the first edition and a little bit of the second edition. This is a review for the third edition of the rules that I recently got through the kind donations from Viper Dave, good friend of the channel. And so I wanted to do a review after playing through the games and looking at everything and giving everyone my honest opinion about what I thought about the third edition. So when I'm talking about Conflict of Heroes, this review again is going to be centered around the third edition of the rules and, you know, whether I enjoy these or not. So without further ado, we always talk about the things we like to begin with. So let's talk about the things we like, shall we? Cardboard Commander, what's going on? Thank you for watching the podcast. Thank you for having the podcast, sir. You know, I'm just teasing you. You know that. I love you. You're doing a great job. We have nothing but the utmost respect for you, and we wish nothing for the best for you. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the pros, the 5 best things about Conflict of Heroes. This, again, when I'm giving my opinions on this review, it's specifically about the third edition. Number 1, and this has always been one of the best things about the Academy games and everything they do, they put their heart and soul into the product, and you can tell that by the counters. These are super big, thick, nice counters. Super great counters. You're going to be obviously using them in a tactical World War II game. They're like 1 inch. They're super big sized. They're super thick. They look really nice. The font is very clean. You can read the letters. You can read the numbers. Everything is great about the counters. So highly recommend those, especially, you know, for us people that are wearing glasses now. We can't see across the table as well as we used to. Now you got these huge numbers on counters. They should have been doing this 20, 30 years ago. Maybe we all wouldn't be wearing glasses right now. But the counters are awesome. Beautiful counters. I really like them. Number 2 is the artwork. Obviously, you can see the artwork on the front cover of the box is awesome. The artwork in the books are well done. The artwork on the cards is nice. The aesthetics, the look of the counters, everything. Very nice artwork. Makes it very interesting. It looks great on the table. The artwork is fantastic. The maps are outstanding. The detail that's in the map work is absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's probably the best looking maps in all of my tactical wargaming that I can think of. There's a lot of extra little pieces and parts in the maps, and you can see, like in the roads, you can see the ruts from where the cars were driving. You know, you have individual little bushes on the map. It's just, the artwork is fantastic, especially the maps. Number 3, the variety of units. We're talking about, you know, the Battle of Kursk. There is a lot of units in this. There's a lot of different kinds of units. There's a ton of different tanks. There's a ton of different infantry units. There's mortar units. There's anti-tank weapons. You name it, there's a nice variety of units. Not just the same old unit. There is actually infantry 1941 units. There's infantry 1943 units with different stats and different ratings and stuff. So they give you a nice variety of the different amount of units. It is a very, very well done. It gives you a nice variety. All your different variety of tanks are in there. Lots of different tanks if you are a tank. I'm not personally a tank guy. I'm more of a infantry grunt man, but if you love the tanks and you love having lots of different tanks out there, then you will probably really like this with the variety of units. Number 4, I love the way Academy Games has done their programmed instructions, where you're reading sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the rule booklet, and then you're playing scenario 1 and scenario 2. Then you're going to read the next couple sections of the rule book and you're going to play scenario 3 and scenario 4. And then you read the next little bit and you're playing scenario 5 and 6. And then so you have this, it's not overwhelming you right off the bat. It's giving you enough, giving you enough information to play the game, not with everything, but it gives you enough to get you started, get you up and running, putting things on the map, moving counters around and playing the game and seeing how it is. So their programmed instruction is awesome. Really, really well done. I like it a lot. I think a lot of companies should use this. I think a lot of game companies, especially like tactical games, should use this. And I think it's a great way of having somebody learn the game very quickly. Number 5. A lot of different scenarios, and when I mean different scenarios, I don't mean like, oh, this scenario has got like you're doing, these infantry versus these infantry, and then the next scenario is these infantry versus a different set of infantry. What I'm saying a different scenario is like scenario 1 is where you have to get your there is a satchel that the Russian player has to bring in and take it to the headquarters. So you're moving this unit across the board. There's another scenario where you've got different vehicles moving, one from the north down to the south, and you have one from the south moving up to the north. And the Russian player needs to intercept those. So you don't just have a bunch of units versus a bunch of units, and it's kill one another. There's a lot of cool, okay, I've got to get this guy from here to the headquarter building, and I got to secure that headquarter building and find a way to keep the satchel there, because if the Germans steal the satchel back, then they're going to get a lot of victory points. So there is a very cool way they just design the scenarios. Again, I don't see this with a lot of other tactical games. Unfortunately, a lot of tactical games is just, here's your units, here's the enemy units, go kill one another. I like how, at least in this, there is a really cool variety in what you're doing and what you're, how the scenario unfolds. Well, that's a lot of really great things about Conflict of Heroes, but unfortunately, my friends, as we always know, there's always going to be some like things, and there's always going to be some things we don't like. So now we're going to talk about the cons. So, there are going to be things that obviously we didn't enjoy as much. Let's talk about this. Number 1 is the counter trays, and oh my good lord, for as much effort and time that Academy Games put into making their game look beautiful on the table, they put zero effort into their counter trays. It has got to be, and I am not kidding you, this has got to be, and yes, Christopher guessed it right off the bat, this has got to be the number 1 worst counter tray I've experienced for a war game in years and years. Now with that said, not a lot of war games come with counter trays, okay? Not every war game comes with a counter tray, but this war game comes with fancy dancy, specifically designed 3 of them so they fit exactly inside the box. So they put the time and effort into creating these. They are god-awful terrible, and I would probably just find you a GMT counter tray, get a couple of those and use those, because the counter trays in this game is horrible. Do not use it. It's terrible. Moving on. Number 2, the card quality and the variety. This is kind of two things in once. The card quality, I am used to, and I'm spoiled, but I am used to GMT cards, which are very thick, very nice, sturdy cards. These cards in Conflict of Heroes are very thin and flimsy. They are not really like, it's not an integral part of the Conflict of Heroes system. It is part of the system, but it's not like super important like the counters and the maps. And I'm not sure why Academy Games decided to cheap out on cheaper cards. The other thing is there's a variety. You get a super thick stack of cards and you're like, oh, this is cool, right? No, it's not, because like you get this super cool stack, but there's like 6 copies of every card. So like you only have like 5, 6, 8 different cards. There's not a lot of, I don't know how many, I haven't counted them. There's not a whole bunch of different cards. You're not getting like a 50 card stack of different things. You're getting like maybe 20, and you got a stack of cards that are like, 40 to 60 cards, because you got 10 different, you have 10 different things, and there's 6 copies apiece. So it's just, and again, the quality of the cards kind of brings it down a little bit. Unfortunately, they're just not very well done, and so it's just kind of a little disappointing when you have a beautiful looking game with beautiful counters and then you have these thin cheapy cards. It just doesn't make sense. Moving on, number 3. Okay, we're gonna have a discussion about their wacky D10 dice, and this is gonna go on to number 5, so I'm not gonna talk about it too much, but I am not a big fan of the wacky D10 dice. You are not using a normal D10. It's a normal D10, but it's got different sides. There's two 1s, 2 3s, and 2 5s. So it's weighted down to be a number like 1, 2, or 3 happens 50% of the time. 4, 5, 6, 7 happen 50% of the time. It's a weird dice, and I understand what they were trying to do. They didn't want to go with the 6-sided dice, because if I have spent 1 action point and I got to roll a 6-sided dice, I have a 16% chance of spending that unit, which will cause me to, flip that unit over and not be able to activate it anymore. And they didn't want a huge chance of that to happen, so they decided to go do a D10 system, which is fine, and I love D10s. It's my favorite dice out there, to be honest. But then you make it this wacky dice where you have to actually have a chart on the player board so players can figure out, okay, if I got to roll a 2, what is my percentage chance of that a 1 or a 2 coming up? Or if you're used up 4 points, what is the chance of a 1, 2, 3, or 4 coming out? It's extra work for no benefit, and I don't like it at all. And we're going to talk more about this here in a minute, unfortunately. Number 4, the disappointment is the amount of units on the board, which is also going to go to number 5. So this is going to be a continuation of this as we talk about number 5. You have a very small number of units on the board. The scenario we were playing, and yes, was an introductory scenario that we were playing yesterday, but it only had literally 2 German units on the board in turn 1, 2 German units versus like 4 Russian units on the board. So 2 German versus 4 Russian units on the board during turn 1. Now turn 2, the Germans got 2 more, so they had 4. And the Russians had 1 more unit come on, so they had 5. So the total amount was 4 versus 5. Now, again, this is an introductory scenario, but if you go through and look through the rest of the scenarios, they're all very light in this the amount of units. And I think that is because of number 5, which we're going to talk about right now. And that is the changes to 3rd edition. So in the past, and like I said, I was one of the first people in the world to play Conflict of Heroes. Uwe was living in Ohio, came down to Buckeye Game Fest, Cabs, and introduced it to us at Cabs. It was a Saturday or whatever, and kind of talked about it, blah, blah, blah. We did some playtesting for him. We gave him some ideas and this, that, and the other thing. I was at Origins when he released the game. He gave me a copy to go and teach people how to play the game. I've been playing Conflict of Heroes for years and years and years. Again, I've only played version 1 and version 2, and I wanted to try the 3rd edition because I knew there was some huge changes to it. So the way it was done before was you would activate a unit, you would get a certain amount of activation points, and that unit was doing its thing. Okay, I get to fire. It's going to cost me 3 action points to fire. Then I can spend an action point to move the unit. And then I can spend another action point and some command points to have the unit fire again. And then when the unit was done, it was spent. Now what happens is every single time you activate a unit, that unit moves or that unit rallies or it fires or whatever, you're rolling that wacky D10, which is a fine system. The problem is what you've done is you've turned this random game with random units into you turned it into a random amount of time that each unit will do things. And so you can't have a scenario with a whole bunch of units out there because some of these units might take 5, 6, 7 actions to do things because it keeps passing its check on that wacky D10. And yesterday we had a unit that literally had to roll a 5, 6, or 7, which had an 80% chance of failing. It had an 80% chance of failing, and I succeeded 5 times in a row. So this unit, and it was the last unit that wasn't spent, so it fired, passed its check, fired, passed its check, fired, passed its check, fired, passed its check, fired, passed its check again, until it finally ended up failing his check after like the 6th time. It was insane and it was crazy. So you've taken a tactical level game and you've now turned it into a random amount of time that each of the units will activate and do things. You can move a unit one little space and it can be spent. And there is literally another unit that can literally run across the board 38 spaces as long as it keeps passing its check. And it's completely, unfortunately, random because you're using this wacky D10 and you can supplement that with your command points. And so these turns last extremely long with just 4 German units on the board and 5 Russian units. 5 Russian units, 4 Germans on the board. These turns were lasting anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes. Now, I was playing solo, just keep that in mind, but it was extremely long turns with a very few amount of units. And now I realize why there is very few units on the board, because if you had 20 units versus 20 units, you would be playing like 2 hours a turn, because some of these units are just going to keep passing their checks and it's going to take literally forever. So that is a lot of said about the game and the system. There is a lot of really good things. The counters, the artwork, the variety of units, the programmed instructions, the way the scenarios are designed, the way they the way the scenarios unfold and, having things show up and randomness and all that, really well done. But man, those counter trays are awful. The card quality and variety of cards is just not there. You're using this wacky D10 to keep units passing their checks. You have hardly any units on the board because you are afraid of the units to, keep passing their checks over and over and over and over and over again. And the turn will never end. It'll just keep going on forever and ever and ever. And the way they've changed it is not, in my opinion, a tactical level game. And it's not, in my opinion, the Conflict of Heroes that I grew up enjoying and playing. Unfortunately, as I said, if you missed out and you just kind of fast forward this on YouTube and you're just waiting to see what my verdict is, maybe you missed out. I've been playing Conflict of Heroes since it was in inception. It wasn't even released yet. And Uwe and his son brought it to Cabs. We played it at Cabs. He showed us, talked about it, and, we're going to use this command ops system and blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. And this was before it was even a thing. So I've been playing a lot of first edition. I had purchased the digital back from Matrix Games back in the day. I would play it. If you go back and on my channel, probably 12 to 15 years ago, I was playing Conflict of Heroes. So I have played a ton of Conflict of Heroes. Okay? So I don't want anyone saying, oh, well, you only played one scenario. How are you going to review Conflict of Heroes when you've only played one scenario? I played one scenario because I wanted to see how the changes are affecting what had happened in Conflict of Heroes that I was used to. And it is completely different than the Conflict of Heroes. Now, I've watched online, there is a video by Uwe that he did talking about the changes to the third edition and why they've done that, and about battlefield integrity and how men don't respond well and this, that, and the other thing. And that's all great and fine and historically accurate. And I don't doubt a word that he says about in his video. What I know is the gameplay part of the video is you've taken a tactical level game with strategy and you've completely removed that from randomness. Again, I can have one unit that is passing its checks and doing damage and just wiping out units left and right because he keeps passing his checks, and the other side is not passing any of their checks. They're failing them all, which is what happened to the Germans the first couple turns. They couldn't do anything because they kept failing their checks. And it just turns into this random, who can roll this wacky D10 dice better is what it turns out to be. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of the strategy out because you're thinking, well, I will do this, and then once I can do this, I will try to flank your units and this, that, and the other thing. But no, you move one space and you roll the wacky D10 and you spent because you rolled a 1. Now, there's only a 20% chance, but 20% of the time that happens to you. You move a space and you're done for the whole round. And I had literally another unit that ran halfway across the board in one turn. It just turns into this random fest, unfortunately. So, my final verdict, while everything is great and looks, it's the gameplay that matters to me the most. And because of this, I'm going to say that Conflict of Heroes is going to be rated a 64%. I'm going to say it's a fine game. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just not my cup of tea. The way I grew up on Conflict Heroes, the way that I remember Conflict Heroes, and I'm not saying it's a 64 because it's different. I was really hoping that Conflict of Heroes would improve, because to me, first edition and second edition of Conflict of Heroes was only like about a 70% game anyways. It had some issues originally, and I was hoping the third edition would fix those issues. And with this alternating action system and everything else, I thought, yes, this will be great. Maybe this will fix the things I didn't like about the first edition or the second edition. Unfortunately, it doesn't fix it in a positive manner for me. Now, a lot of people might like that randomness in their tactical level games and rolling a dice every time they activate a unit. The one thing I didn't talk about that I also didn't like is every time you activate a unit, you have to put a little token on it to represent that as the unit that you just activated. Because if you activate that unit the next time, then you have to fatigue it, meaning it has an extra action cost to do things, and to when you roll the dice, it has a better chance of failing because the unit is fatigued now. So you're constantly trying to remember, oh my god, which unit did I just activate? Oh, I can't activate that unit again. If I do have to activate, it's just a lot of extra work, and it's just kind of, I just don't get it. I understand what they were trying to do, but I think there was a lot better ways of doing it. This action system is great, but what they should have done was design it so that like every unit gets to activate once for free or something, and then once you activate for free, then you have to start spending action points. There's other ways they could have done it. This D10 that's got this weird matrix on it is extremely hard to try and figure out and play, and it just kind of ruins the luster of the game. It looks great, and it looks impressive on the table, and the components are awesome, except for the cards and the trays. But the actual units on the board and the maps look awesome, but man, it's just, you're spending literally I had a game with 2 Germans and 4 Russians, and turn 1, it was only a 5-turn scenario, and the second turn, the Germans got 2 more units, and the Russian got 1 more unit, so it was basically a 4 versus 5, and it took 2.5 hours to play this scenario, which is only 5 turns long. And it is way too long, and there's just not enough units on the board anymore, because the more units is just the longer it's going to take for you to get through each scenario. And it's just, it takes all the strategy out of it for me. Unfortunately, it's a fine game. It still plays fine. It's just nothing that to write home about, I guess is the best way to put it. That is my opinion. Maybe you have a different one. If you do, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear it if you've played the 3rd edition. If not, hopefully this will steer you either to buying it, because it is a great looking game. There's a lot of really nice things. If the AI flows pretty well, it's very quick turns. I'm talking, this is the quickest tactical level game you will ever play, because I'm moving 1 space, I'm done. That's it. That's all I get to do. I get to move 1 space, and then I have to roll the dice to make sure I pass my turn. Yeah, it's one of those things that if you have 5 units on the board or 9 units on the board and they keep passing their checks, you got to wait until all 9 fail their checks, and you're supplementing your command points to make sure they pass their checks. You're spending command cards to make them pass their checks. You're doing everything to keep your units from becoming spent, because once they're spent, they're pretty much done for the round. Excuse me. So with that said, it's still a fine game. Looks great. Plays fine. It's just, I think I would like a little bit more control over my tactical level games than what is presented in this kind of game. So anyways, that is my verdict for Conflict of Heroes Storm of Steel, the 3rd edition. Specifically, again, we're talking about just the 3rd edition. It's a 64%. It's fine. I think there are a lot other and better games out there, but this might be a perfect game for you to try. The other thing is, it is extremely, extremely expensive to purchase 3rd edition. So, I don't understand why, and that's the only reason I have not purchased any third edition, because it's been extremely hard to get and it's been extremely costly. And I was like, I'm not spending $200 on this game here. I was lucky enough to have a good subscriber donate it to me and a couple others, and I appreciate that. But I would never have spent $200 to buy this game, and I'm not sure why it costs that much. Um, it's a little baffling, but it's near the end of the month, so I wanted to get a couple reviews in before the end of the month hits for our review show coming up tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you soon. Take care. Have a good night. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this, if you want to see more reviews, and if there's a game you want me to review, leave a comment down below, and we'll see about getting that done for you. Thanks so much. We'll take care. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.